In the shadows of history, beneath the romanticized tales of chivalrous knights and grand courts, lies the truth of a life many were forced to lead the life of a medieval thief. At first glance, thievery in medieval times may seem like a tempting path to a quick fortune amidst the perils and squalor of a feudal society. Yet, behind the allure is a harsh reality that speaks to the desperation and poverty defining those who dared tread this perilous path. Before you settle in, take a second to like and subscribe, only if this kind of storytelling speaks to you. And while you're here, tell me in the comments where you're watching from and what time it is. I love seeing how far these whispers travel. Now, dim the lights, maybe switch on a fan for that soft hum, and let's drift into tonight's journey together. Picture medieval Europe, a land of rigid hierarchies where privilege was inherited and poverty seemingly eternal. The common folk toiled endlessly in fields to wring survival out of unforgiving soil. There, necessity, not desire, led many into the shadows of illegality, where thievery became the sole refuge from starvation. For the peasantry, the sun rose and set on grueling labour with little respite. Hands calloused and backs bent, days filled with tilling and harvesting yielded meagre returns. In stark contrast, the siren call of theft-quick, though perilous, promised what slow labour could not: a chance for reprieve, a fleeting moment of prosperity. But the descent into criminality was often neither grand nor deliberate. It began with mundane events: a stolen loaf, fallen fruital, trivial enough until they marked one with an indelible scarlet letter. Once branded a thief, medieval society made few concessions for redemption. The scar of thievery left a man on the outskirts, forever battling the shadows of mistrust that followed him through each narrow street. Embark upon this unwanted profession, and the challenges compounded. The rampant scarcity meant that valuables were few, rendering each haul a gamble. The thieving trade was fraught with hazards. Selecting a target was akin to picking a dance partner from a den of wolves, each misstep potentially fatal. The guards, ever vigilant, paired with dogs whose barks were harbingers of doom for the unwary. Gossip, too, spread like wildfire, betraying the thief before he even made his move. Survival was an art, one woven into the very fabric of their beings. But beyond the legal perils lay simple life nuances that tormented the thief-stained cloak ever out of place. The reeking smell of desperation against the breeze. Even dogs, those innocuous creatures, could sniff out the fear a thief exuded. In medieval communities, security systems were ingeniously crafted from necessity, with villagers employing methods as varied as cunningly placed traps or alarm-like setups. The contrast between honest labour and the tantalising lure of thievery was stark. For a medieval peasant, the farm toil was relentless, with harvests that mocked their back-breaking efforts, providing just enough to stave off hunger, but never quite enough to soothe the soul's yearning for respite. The allure of theft lay in its promise of liberation from ceaseless hardship, a seductive whisper of riches waiting just beyond the plough. Yet, the romantic notion of quick riches through theft dissolved swiftly upon facing the grim reality of execution. A thief's existence was fraught with tension, each night presenting the puzzle of survival amid limited spoils and soaring risks. These intrepid souls had to navigate an environment woven with peril, choosing targets not for their worth but for their vulnerability, hoping always for the fortune of an unguarded door or a household asleep. The dangers included the ever-watchful eyes of village guardsmen who knew every face and every alleyway, and the keen noses of hounds trained to raise alarms at the first hint of an intruder. Even silence was not a trustworthy ally, as gossip in tightly knit communities carried secrets faster than any messenger, often preempting a thief's misadventures before dusk had set. Harder still was the isolation that defined a thief's social existence. Once ostracized, the subsequent challenge was not just to survive, but to evade the pervasive watchfulness, marked always by the telltale dress of an outcast. Cleanliness, as a luxury, was eclipsed by its necessity for stealth. A thieving cloak that went unscented, and a visage that blended seamlessly, was as priceless as the meagre possessions they sought. Ingenious villagers, lacking sophisticated locks, resorted to inventive means of protection. String alarms, hidden pits, and even rudimentary trip wire simple yet effective contraptions guarded their possessions. Every precaution was a testament to human ingenuity, reflecting a world fiercely committed to protecting its scant treasures. Faced with both visible and unseen deterrents, thieves often relied on cunning even more than courage. To persist required not just skill, but an acceptance of the cascade of consequences that unfurl from a single miscalculation. Those who persevered did so with a resigned acknowledgement of public shaming and physical punishment ever hanging like a storm cloud on the horizon. In the dusty annals of forgotten tales, those who traversed the path of a medieval thief found their existence defined by two opposing forces: the necessity of stealth and the inevitability of capture. Stepping into the life of an outlaw was rarely a conscious decision. It was the magnetic pull of hunger and the relentless push of societal expectation that unwittingly drew them onward. The slide into criminality was often subtle. It began with an unnoticed pluck of fruit from a tattered stall or a swift hand reaching beneath the cover of night to relieve a laundry line of its linen. These were acts born of desperation rather than malice, but with each petty theft, the transformation into a thief in the eyes of society became complete. The medieval community forgets slowly, and forgiveness was a luxury too cumbersome to bestow. Once branded, the life of a thief was relentless and unforgiving. It was a small step from a petty crime to being forever ensnared in the net of infamy that medieval society wove so well. The values you carried had to be few, for possessions were burdens during a hasty retreat, and trust from others was fleeting. The profession was not without its ironies. The act of thievery promised fleeting spoils, yet demanded an endurance akin to that of a seasoned artist, painting within the lines dictated by pity and avarice. Few homes in medieval villages boasted lavish treasures. Instead, the bounty on offer was mundanly a loaf, a comb, a candle butt. It was the theft of these simple items that could brand a life. While the physical perils were numerous, internal struggles raged just as fiercely. Many a thief grappled with the moral sacrifice of their choices. The isolation that followed a thief was as tangible as their fear of capture. Even with the poorest disguise or an alias conjured from the whispers of falsified glory, nothing deterred the knowing glares from a suspicious village or the bark of a hawkish dog. Standing forever outside the fringes of acceptance, thieves faced a life in perpetual motion, moving through shadows even the sun feared to touch. As dusk settled across fields of echoes, the spectre of punishment loomed ever larger, its presence, a constant reminder of the world's weight. Public shaming was an ordeal where one's dignity was laid bare, sometimes alongside the body, subject to taunts and jeers. Yet, in a profession where misfortune shadowed, the courage to persist was often stronger than the chains of fear. In the dimmest corners of a medieval village, where moonlight barely graced the cobbled paths and shadows claimed dominion, a thief's craft was honed with unequalled precision, a stark necessity in a life dictated by scarcity and survival. The challenges they faced were woven into the very fabric of their clandestine trade, each thread a testament to the exhaustive vigilance required for even a meagre gain. At the heart of their struggles was the paucity of genuine loot. Most villagers owned little of value common spoons, worn shoes, perhaps a chicken, and such possessions were guarded not by richness, but by affection. Scouring the village, a thief quickly learned that desperation heightened the senses, making even the barest trifle seem a treasure, when survival itself was at stake. A daring few targeted wealthier abodes. But these ventures bore an elevated risk, as any wealth so easily visible was typically shielded by vigilant guardians, and, more perilously, the loyalty of those within. The deft hand of a thief knew the map of feet over creaky wood just as well as it knew the menace conveyed in a dog's growl. Households that appeared unattended were often so by design, orchestrated traps for unwary hands. Keen was the sense required to distinguish between genuine absence and feigned vacancy. Dogs, ever alert and judicious in their loyalty, posed a further layer of defence, sharper and more treacherous than the blunt edges of communal scorn. To outwit a village watchdog was as much a skill as sleight of hand, and a hallmark of those who dared scale the precarious heights of thievery. But of all the barriers facing the medieval thief, none was as insidious as the ever-watchful community. Gossip flowed with the water of the village wells, swift, and unyielding. In a world where faces were as familiar as one's own, a newcomer, especially one brazen enough to pillage, stood out conspicuously. Reputations once sullied rarely shed their stains, and the suspicion's child often found doors closed and eyes narrowed. To remain unseen, a thief constantly crafted newer guises, juggled alternate personas, and hoped for the cloak of ignorance to settle lightly across prying eyes. Such was the precarious platform upon which a thief balanced. One misstep, and the whisper of a community condemned them. Yet, for every shadow creeping alongside the law's reach, an unquenchable thirst for existence propelled them. In the labyrinthine cobblestones of medieval life, our hapless thief had yet another adversary to face, not immediately visible, yet as relentless as any sheriff's hunting hounds. Beyond the sword of punishment dangled a reality of daily drudges that challenged even the most adept craftsman of stealth. The overlooked aspects of a thief's existence were as unforgiving as the sharpness of the decree that branded them. Hygiene in the medieval era was a grim parody of care, especially for those living on the margins of society. A thief's life was a continuous circuit through narrow alleys and swamps of grime, where each step was accompanied by the gnawing necessity to remain elusive. Bathing was a luxury, oftentimes available only in the sporadic kindness of rain that cleansed not just the skin but also the spirit momentarily. Clothes, torn yet cherished, were stitched hurriedly, threadbare where they weren't darned by the subtle fingers of night. Living conditions for medieval thieves were bleak, to say the least. Their beds were often a patchwork of straw and scavenged linens, assembled in haste under the arch of abandoned structures or the slant of sympathetic barns. Every creak or rustle was a potential harbinger of discovery. Every night a test of endurance against the chill curls of the wind. Solitude was both a refuge and a constant companion, its whispers as familiar as the moth-eaten fabric drawn up as a feast to the famine of comfort. In such anonymity lay another danger, the peril of sticking out. In towns where every face told a familiar story, the stranger's countenance was a canvas of suspicion. The thief had to evolve, one step ahead of whispers and one leap beyond discerning glances. Disguise was more than a mere cloak. It was an art form, a calculated display of inconspicuousness, challenging a crowd's collective gaze to look but not to see. Unbidden, village dogs, the tacit sentinels of their masters, added another layer of risk. Their judgment was unclouded, loyalty steeped in bark and bite. Even the sturdiest of disguises could unravel in the presence of such unerring guardians. A thief learned to tiptoe around territorial beasts, but never truly silenced the fear of an alarmed bark, thrusting their shadow into the harsh light of day. Thus, corners turned opposite ways, but all kept thieves running in loops of desperation. Medieval folklore often whispered of charms and mystic spells to ward off spirits, but in the practical realm of the thief, such tales were shadowed by a more tangible nemesis, evolving ingenuity of medieval security systems. Villagers, devoid of modern-day locks and alarms, relied on a tapestry of wit and resourcefulness to safeguard their precious little possessions. To a thief, each village was a puzzle, a labyrinth, not just of geography, but of an intricate dance between stealth and the ever-growing defences laid by wary residents. What the village lacked in wealth, it made up for in its clever barriers. Entryways were often decked with rudimentary trap strip wires, cleverly disguised in scattered straw, designed to send clay pots crashing to the ground, creating an unwelcome chorus. Doors, aged and warped, were propped with loose planks that clattered noisily if disturbed, the cacophony rousing residents from even the deepest of sleeps. Windows, though few and modest in the thick stone huts, were not left unguarded. Villagers wove wooden bars between the rough-hewn sills, or placed sharp shards of glass, leaving openings that taunted yet deterred, suggesting a passage but inviting pain. Eavesdropping through these apertures offered snippets of conversation, symphonies of fear and suspicion woven into the fabric of nightly chatter. Children were often enlisted into this subtle war of prevention, trained to note the unfamiliar sounds or faces, their innocent observations transforming into the village's alarm system. But it was not just noise that was employed against the thief. A diligence in formation patrolled the very air, elder residents recalling tales of times past where ingenuity thwarted mischief, weighted nets strung about like cobwebs in attics, ready to enmesh the foolishly unwary. or the vivid paint spilled mischievously across thresholds, a telltale splash marking a thief for days to come. It was a dance of attrition, where a thief's sense of adventure met the villager's imagination, one of strategy against counter-strategy. The thrill of circumventing these defences held its allure, yet each new tactic encountered was a reminder of the endlessly inventive opposition thieves faced in their nightly endeavours. In this chiaroscuro of quiet challenge and braided night spots, the stage seemed set for our thief, lured by whispers of wealth and tales of clever traps, to cast his lot once more. Summoning the courage to continue in a landscape so hostile wasn't merely an act of defiance, it was an art, an unspoken pact between survival and spirit. For our medieval thief, life was no gentle harbour. Rather, it was an uncharted sea, where the waves of fortune seemed ever intent on dragging him into chasms of despair. The relentless spectre of public shaming loomed large in every town and hamlet. Stocks in the square, a gallery for an unforgiving populace, stood ready to trap miscreants in acts of remorseful display. Faces etched with scornful shadows gathered, their gazes sharp as any blade, judging and branding with looks alone. For a thief, the daunting knowledge of this fate tethered courage to a quivering heart. Each beat a silent promise to evade capture. Punishment was more than mere confinement, it was corporeal, visceral. Whips cut not just flesh but etched scars into the soul, reminders of societal reproach at each awakening. Yet, in the heart of each punishment lay a kernel of rebellion, fueling a quiet resilience that whispered persistently of freedom and defiance. While the physical hurt could be drawn like an oozing poison from the skin, the mental endurance built in the forge of pain became armour, seamless and strong. In the shadows of these tribulations was a kinship among those resigned to the same fate. The thief, once alone in a multitude of townsfolk, found unexpected allies among fellow rogues, each bearing their own burdens of stigma. This clandestine brotherhood provided insights and cautions, tales of near misses, and the dance of the clever over the clumsy. In these alliances lay a shared history, a tacit acknowledgement that survival often leaned as much on camaraderie as cunning. With each new town conquered and each wary night survived, a thief's renown grew a tale told in hushed tones over moonlit fires, their deeds becoming fables. Yet, this reputation was double-edged. It lent both dread in villagers' eyes and a heightened sense of watchfulness in those sworn to capture. The cycle continued a grim dance with fate, where courage was tested not by grand battles, but by nightfall's silent siege. Stepping into shadowed streets was akin to stepping onto a stage. Every creak, every shifting shadow, a moment of suspended breath. The persistent need to elude capture shaped the very essence of a thief, painting them with both determination and desperate caution. In the stark light of a medieval dawn, where the charcoal outlines of trees brushed against the burgeoning glow, the reality of a thief's existence sharpened with relentless clarity. Beneath the harsh justice of this world lay a system that had only two possible outcomes: constant flight or inevitable capture. Caught in this relentless cycle, the medieval thief navigated a path as slender as it was treacherous. Once apprehended, society's response was swift and merciless. Justice, dispensed with rugged simplicity, often began with branding. An iron, heated to a fiery red seared flesh with markings that would permanently display one's disgrace. This was more than punishment. It was an indelible testament to a life stained by crime, a visible prison from which there was no escape. Each mark told a story of desperation, a warning for others of the consequences that lay in wait. Rehabilitation was scarcely an option. The medieval world offered few avenues for reformation. Opportunities were scant, and the weight of past transgressions loomed like an indestructible shackle. For many, the narrow path between thievery and conformity blurred into one indistinguishable trail of hardship and perpetual escape. Stigmatized and chased by a haunting history, retirement into a mundane life was a dream as elusive as smoke. Even in this bleak landscape, some dared to envision a better fate, dreaming of a future where the chains of reputation and circumstance could be shed. Few managed to escape the cycle, mastering a delicate tightrope walk between theft and evasion until, perhaps, the cloistering arms of old age could offer protection where society would not. Yet hope lurked in the whispers of the forest and the muted colours of sunset, an unwavering belief that something beyond the boundaries of their grim existence awaited. As the light of day waxed and waned like the inevitability of time itself, a thief's survival became a tapestry woven from shadows, stitches bound by the soft, relentless prayers of those who sought more than they were allotted. In the dim glow of twilight, the thief stood at the crossroads of fate, the echoes of the past reverberating with tomorrow's uncertainties. Just as shadows lengthened across the village, where each corner held both familiar, comfort, and ominous challenge, one question lingered, suspended in amber-hued dusk. Would the light of daybreak find the thief in flight? Or had a new path finally appeared amidst the bramble of hardship? The night's cloak wrapped itself snugly around the village, each rustle in the underbrush, a sonorous testament to secrets untold and stories yet unfinished. Our medieval thief, a shadow among shadows, inched through cobblestone alleys with practiced ease, every step a calculated venture into uncertainty. Each stolen coin and clandestine whisper perpetuated a narrative woven from necessity and choice, shaping a legend as elusive as it was tangible. Tonight seemed different, though. A whisper of change stirred the air, carrying with it a hint of possibilities undreamt. As the thief approached the worn edges of the town's limits, the silhouette of an unexpected chance gleamed faintly against the horizon, mere glint that tempted with promises unspoken. Was it the night's allure that lulled sanity, or was it the chill of desperation that kindled such audacious hope? The thief lingered at this cusp of decision, where every choice bore the weighty promise of fate's indifference. Moments slipped by like forgotten memories, drawn to the ethers of time. Each shallow breath mirrored the crisp night air, tangible and transient. Nothing about this life was eternal, save for the reckoning that often simmered quietly beneath the veneer of shadows. The mark on the thief's arm, a testament to past indulgences and errors, felt both a burden and a challenge. Could destiny be rewritten? One whisper asked. Could a thief, born from necessity, carve a niche beyond the bounds decreed by iron and flame? The familiar surroundings of the village seemed strangely foreign under this nocturnal veil, an enclave of visible history. Each stone in the pathway carried the echoes of countless feetsome questing, others restless, all caught in the indefinable web of their own making. The thief moved through these echoes with purpose, attuned to the rhythm of his own existence as a sun rises to meet its day, but stopped just shy of a pivotal crossroads with a note of contemplation. Beyond lay the unknown and whispers of redemption. Behind loomed familiar terrain, one that sang of safety and inevitably its own consequences. The thief weighed these choices carefully, balancing on the precipice of transformation or continued evasion. It was a tightrope walk above the abyss, each side offering its own peril and promise. And as the first tendrils of dawn began to weave their gentle embrace across the still slumbering world, an undeniable resolution flickered in those shadowed eyes. The first light of dawn spilled like liquid gold over the huddled forms of thatched roofs and cobbled streets, whispering secrets only the day could hold. The thief, standing poised at the brink of opportunity, found the silence of the morning both daunting and serene. This moment caught between the memory of bygone nights and the hope of uncharted days was charged with an energy that set the senses astir. As the youth of the day began to unfurl, there came a convergence of old entanglements and new possibilities. The thief knew every stone of the village, every whispering shadow, yet beyond this world lay the edge of another, not quite visible, but very much felt. This tantalizing promise was spun with strands of hope. Could there be a life outside the familiar grasp of infamy, beyond the intertwined ropes of survival and despair? The choice was not merely one of direction, but rather of identity, decision not just of footsteps, but of purpose. To relinquish the shadows would mean to forsake a lifetime of nurtured instincts and hardened reflexes. Yet, to deny the ghostly pull of potential meant submitting to the endless cycle of pursuit and evasion, a wheel invariably turning back on itself. In the quiet theatre of this burgeoning day, a newfound courage kindled within the thief's heart, a courage born not from audacity, but from necessity. A whisper echoed through the dawn, urging the courage to follow one's own thread, to dare the labyrinth that fate offered with unknown intention. The symphony of dawn cracked wide open with the calls of morning birds punctuating the stillness, and the thief, no longer a mere spectre in the night, began a slow, deliberate walk away from the haunting curtain of familiar shadows. The air seemed to breathe with them, lifting the burdens of past decisions and giving life to the aspirations unfathomed. As the village began to stir awake behind, the path unfurled, deceptive in its simplicity, yet filled with the quiet, profound promise of becoming. Each step forward was a testament to the life that could be carved out of uncertain route, unmarked by fear, yet conscious of the shadows that would ever linger nearby. With each stride came a sense of buoyancy, one that the thief had seldom felt, a weightless sense of drifting, not above each threshold crossed, but through a dawn promising more than mere survival. The sun, newly risen, bathed the edge of the world in a warm, inviting glow, painting the fields beyond with strokes of golden light that spoke of renewal. The thief, once a shadow flitting between the veils of night, now stood bathed in morning's grace, where each step taken from the dappled shroud of familiar alleys was a step toward possibility, nascent and infinite. This newfound resolve blossomed within, tempered by the still fresh memories of survival's relentless gauntlet. Every heartbeat was a reminder of the risks yet to be faced, and the heartaches that had marked the past. Yet, this threshold held a different allure, one born not from necessity, but from the uncharted realms of choice. Standing at this juncture, the thief was compelled to ponder the essence of freedom. Was it merely the opposite of captivity, or did freedom reside in the courage to chart one's own path without the markings of one's past? As the village receded into a blur of reminiscence, the landscape stretched wide, promising anonymity and a chance to become a stranger to one's own past. The fields whispered an unfamiliar welcome, urging the thief forward with each rustle of the morning breeze. Here, where the world felt simultaneously vast and intimate, every decision felt imbued with significancia, way to sculpt the future from the brittle clay of present choices. Yet with promise often comes apprehension. A new life meant shedding more than just the labels bestowed by society. It required a shedding of fears, learned distrust, and the conditional comforts of the known, however bleak. Choices loomed like tender buds, frail and burgeoning with the opportunity to blossom or wither on the vine of hesitation. The horizon, wide open and inscrutable, posed its own silent question. Could someone forged in the fires of necessity truly reshape their kind? Or would the shadows of past deeds inevitably tug one's coattails, whispering stories of where you'd been rather than where you might hope to go? As if in response, a sound rippled through the gentle rustle of leaves, a fragile promise of spring, weary beneath the frost's memory. It danced on the edge of perception, a murmur that seemed to invite the thief to chase its source, calling forth the spirit of exploration. Intrigue, laden with hints of transformation, drummed a barely audible cadence in the recesses of thought. Drawn by an unseen thread, the thief found their feet unconsciously tracing a path toward the horizon's mystery, each step weaving a tapestry of courage interlaced with the thorny vines of the past. The air was crisp, carrying with it the aroma of earth awakening from its slumber. Above, the vaulted sky stretched endlessly, a limitless canopy that made one's burdens feel both inconsequential and unrestrained. Here, where the fields unfurled their silent poetry, bathed in the tender light of the newborn sun, the thief felt the weight of the journey ahead with every breath. The language of the earth murmured in rhythmic harmony, promising and forewarning in equal measure. This journey was not merely a physical odyssey, but a soulful quest, chiseled by the unforgiving hands of past trials, yet graced with the possibility of rebirth. The path itself seemed alive, whispering ancient secrets between its grooves, a thousand tales, each voice an echo of lives once lived and dreams pursued or abandoned. Every soft step on the dew-laden grass was a question mark against the vast canvas of the future, vivid yet delicately elusive. A shiver coursed through the thief, not of chill but anticipation and inward thrill, seasoned with a new awareness of vulnerability. Could this path indeed lead somewhere untethered from the shackles of history, free from the internal landscapes mapped by fear and survival? Only time, that unpredictable storyteller, could reveal the shifting truths of each carefully laid footfall. A distant scuffle drew attention, a stirring just beyond the edges of awareness. The sound blended with the morning orchestra, a quiet note threatening to unfurl into crescendo. It was a call, tender yet insistent, pulling at the weary strands of survival instinct woven into the fabric of the thief's being. There, cradled within the landscape's embrace, silhouetted atop the gentle rise of the land, stood a figure, a solitary sentinel against the expanse of sky. Who could this be amid the woven tapestry of open fields and secrets whispered by rustling leaves? This figure, seemingly poised between erosion and eternity, beckoned without gesture, inviting curiosity wrapped in uncertainty. Would they offer guidance, challenge, or perhaps a reflection of the thief's own unfurling narrative? The balance of unease and hope swung precariously, a pendulum marking the rhythm of unresolved questions. The thief hesitated, the air around them thick with a kind of tension that made the rustling grasses seem louder, more insistent. Each moment stretched long as sunlight fractured across dewdrops, setting the landscape aglow with a shimmer that felt otherworldly. Alone, yet not quite, they moved toward the figure, both stranger and potential ally, heeding the siren call of fate itself. As they closed the distance, the figure atop the rise took shape. Clad in a cloak the colour of midnight, it fluttered about them like the wings of a restless crow. Beneath the hood, a pair of eyes glimmered with a curious intensity, sharp and discerning. Despite the layers of secrecy wrapped around this mysterious presence, an aura of quiet strength emanated from them, commanding attention without words. Drawing near, the thief noticed the scars etched across the stranger's hands marks, not just of survival, but of tales untold, carrying a gravity of history not unlike their own. An unspoken understanding passed between them, a silent acknowledgement of the paths they've both walked through shadows and light. In a voice that resonated like the deep timbre of the earth itself, the stranger spoke. "You've come far for one whose path is strewn with tribulations. But every journey is a choicer tapestry not yet fully woven, yours still vibrant with possibilities." The thief, ensnared by the stranger's gaze and the weight of their words, felt the echoes of past choices reverberate within their bones. Standing on the precipice of decision, doubt threatened to unravel their resolve. Here was someone who might hold answers to questions even deeper than their own. "You seem to seek something beyond the horizon," the stranger continued, voice a gentle murmur against the vast silence. "Perhaps you search for yourself, amid the labyrinth of decisions not yet made. It is a journey we all must take, with or without the light to guide us." With these words, the stranger gestured toward the horizon, an endless expanse of undefined potential. "Will you follow where your heart calls, even when the path falters through the shadows of uncertainty?" The question seemed to bind the present to future possibilities, yet the weight of it lingered, heavy like droplets of rain about to fall. In that moment, the thief understood that this encounter was more than chance. It was the intersecting lines of destiny and desire, the meeting of old scars with the dawn of new beginnings. Confronted by the stranger's probing query, the thief stood motionless, the landscape around them stretching into a vast tableau of opportunity and threat. Each breath carried the weight of the dilemma of paths diverging like veins through the fabric of earth and sky, each one a step toward a possible salvation or downfall. Underneath their worn cloak, the thief felt the remnant chill of the morning air, a physical reminder of the life that had led them here. "I have walked through many shadows," the thief ventured, voice barely more than a whisper, as if afraid to disturb the delicate equilibrium of the moment. "What path, then, does a soul take when all directions seem fraught with danger?" The stranger's eyes softened, a fleeting compassion flashing across that enigmatic gaze. A path chosen freely, even with uncertainty as a companion, often leads to a truer understanding of one's own heart. In every shadow, there lurks the possibility of light. All it needs is the courage to seek it. The thief pondered these words, feeling the pressure of decision settle like a mantle across their shoulders. The idea of choice, wrapped tightly against a future woven with both risk and hope, felt both liberating and terrifying. To step forward was to abandon the known jails of past miseries, to embrace the unknown and march forward into a tapestry not yet painted with failure or triumph. As silence unfurled between them, the land seemed to breathe. The gentle whisper of the wind through whispering leaves carried with it the scent of earth and promise, mingling with the sharpened scent of awakening flora. The horizon, a distant line of yet unseen adventures or adversities, beckoned like a siren, infusing the moment with quiet expectancy. Finally, the thief asked, if one were to leave behind the ghosts of past deeds, would they find forgiveness there beyond the horizon? The stranger, unwavering and steady as the ancient stones of the earth, nodded slowly. Forgiveness is a journey, not a destination, and it begins within. The horizon holds many things, but it is the beholder who finds meaning in its endlessness. With a shared understanding born from parallel tales of survival, they stood gazing into the immense sea of unknown before theme dance of dawn and dusk painted across the sky, captured in the amber glow of hope and trepidation. It was a gentle reminder of the life still to live, of the stories yet to be written in the imprints of their footsteps. Bound by the delicate tether of silent understanding, the thief and the stranger lingered in a shared reverie. The world around them seemed to hold its breath, as if pretending that time itself could be paused for these fleeting heartbeats of contemplation. Moments like these were rare, void of past constraints, steeped instead in the unborn possibilities that lay before them. "You speak as if you've walked this path before," whispered the thief, an edge of curiosity weaved into their words. "Yet here you stand, at this crossroad, where only shadows and light dwell." The stranger tipped their head, a small bow to mysteries unspoken. "We all wander through our own forests of night," they replied, with a hint of a smile. "Sometimes we find ourselves under a sky dense with stars, other times beneath a shroud of clouds. Each path changes us, softens the edges, sharpens the core." In those eyes, pools of profound depth, the thief saw reflections of their own journeys, the narrow escapes through darkened alleyways, the weight of stolen bread clutched in desperate hands, the haunting echoes of pursuit in the night. A life of necessity, not choice, driven by survival amidst a world often stingy with softness and bounty. "It's strange," the thief mused. "How much can hinge on simple choices? When I first took what wasn't mine, I never imagined it would lead here, to questions of horizons and forgiveness." "Life has a way of weaving its own patterns," the stranger said, spreading a hand to catch the morning light filtering through the trees. "Sometimes the skein of fate tangles, sometimes it flows smoother than silk. In relinquishing control, we often find the truest form of freedom." The thief nodded, understanding blossoming like dawn's first light, that even amidst the turmoil, even beneath the scarring weight of past decisions, there lay the unyielding promise of choice. To craft new paths through old woods, to step not merely with fear, but with a renewed resolve towards the horizon's intricate unknown. As they stood together, the landscape stretched vast and whispering before them. The thief felt the stirrings of a decision tenuous yet resilient, a flame kindling slow and sure against an encroaching night. They knew the road would be laden with trials still, but perhaps now travelled with the assurance of newfound clarity. A potential for redemption tucked securely in a hastily mended heart, dust twisted in lazy spirals, carried across the path by a breeze that tugged playfully at the edges of reality, a world between past choices and unseen futures. The thief and the stranger remained side by side, in a stillness that buzzed with the potential of narrative about to unfold. "What is it that you seek beyond the boundaries of this place?" asked the thief, words tumbling forth like pebbles in a stream, each syllable balanced on the precipice between hope and reluctance. The stranger, enigmatic as ever, let their eyes drift to the line where earth kissed sky. "I seek not just escape from what binds me, but perhaps an understanding, a place where paths converge and the truth of our journey is revealed." This search for understanding resonated within the thief, like an echo from the depths of a long-abandoned well. Was it understanding they sought, or merely the balm for the wounds life had scored upon their soul? Each path taken thus far had led here, to this crossroads of fate and decision, where shadows of regret circled like moths around a flickering lantern flame. "You speak of convergence of truths," the thief murmured, words thoughtful and weighted. "Yet truth has always felt as distant to me as the stars." I have lived in the shadows, and I fear I might melt away like them, should I step too far into the light." The stranger chuckled softly, the sound a warm, familiar note against the crisp morning air. "Perhaps it is not the light you need fear, for it is often in the brightest moments that shadows learn to dance, taking new forms, revealing that they too hold a place in the realm of existence." With that, a silence wove itself between them, once more a tapestry of understanding yet unfinished, a knowing that transcended language or circumstance. The world around, untouched by their inner turmoil, continued its eternal dance. Birds trilled sweetly in the trees, and the rustling leaves whispered secrets of their own. In that moment, amidst the symphony of wind and warmth, the thief thought of all the steps they had taken, each footfall a note in an unwritten fugue of survival and introspection. Did every path hold a truth waiting to be embraced? And what awaited them, should they uncover it? "Do you believe," the thief spoke with newfound clarity, "that there lies redemption in seeking the unknown, in stepping beyond one's own shadows?" The stranger's gaze was steady, unwavering. For a long moment, the stranger held the thief's gaze, eyes reflecting the wisdom of one who had wandered both verdant fields and barren wastes. "Redemption," they began, "is not found in fleeing shadows, nor in racing towards an imagined light. It is discovered in the steps we take despite the shadows, in the courage to embrace the questions that arise at each crossroad." The thief felt the weight of those words settle deep within, the contours of their meaning spreading like the slow unfurl of dawn across sleep-dulled lands. They had not intended to search for redemption, knowing well the futility that medieval life often cast over noble pursuits. Yet, here they were, on the brink of such a revelation known that beckoned from beyond the haze of uncertainty they had traversed so long. "What if," the thief ventured, voice tight with emotion, "the questions lead only to more shadows? What if the unseen holds dangers that even the bravest heart cannot endure?" A gentle breeze stirred, whispering through the trees and carrying with it the scent of earth and possibility. The stranger smiled, a gesture that seemed to light the very air between them. "Ah, but therein lies the paradox of bravery. It is not the absence of fear, but the embrace of it. Within each questioned shadow lies the promise of understanding. And it is from understanding that courage, true and unyielding, is born." These were lessons that mingled uneasily with the thief's own tangled history of life, of quick decisions and rapid retreats, painted over with a veneer of necessity. But now, faced with newfound insight, those same lessons beckoned with the possibility of something different, a glimmer of choices, yet untouched, untarnished by past failures or the judgment of others who had never worn their path-worn shoes. As the world edged ever closer to twilight, the light softening to strokes of lavender and gold, the thief knew this moment would require more than understanding. It would demand a decision, a deliberate step towards or away, shaped not by necessity alone, but by the stirring reflections kindled in this wandering stranger's presence. The thief turned to face the road ahead, an endless lattice of paths diverging into the horizon, each fraught with its own share of risk and reward. They trembled at the prospect of what lay beyond, a shiver akin to the anticipatory chill of stepping from shadow into the warming embrace of sunlight. In the deepening twilight, as the sky painted itself with hues only an artist could evoke, there was a pausier breath held suspended in time, as if the very universe awaited the thief's choice. The stranger watched, a sentinel over this pivotal moment, wherein the intersection of past and future would soon be defined by a singular, intentional stride. The thief could feel the whispers of the paths behind them, each beckoning with memories and lessons, both hard-earned and unforgiving. Echoes of footsteps taken in desperation, driven by a poverty not just of coin but of opportunity, reverberated in their mind. Voices from the pastor child's cry, a mother's soothing song wove together in a symphony of longing for days when innocence still held a fragile but hopeful promise. What if these paths do not promise redemption, but only more of what I've known? The thief spoke softly, half to themselves, half confiding the fear clinging like morning mist in their heart. "Ah," the stranger said, their voice a calming wave, as if to wash away the thief's doubts. You will find that paths often mirror those who walk them. Change your vantage, and the path itself may change its course. This notion resonated within the thief, the simplicity of the wisdom, like a gentle ray piercing the fog of their life. What if the key wasn't the path's promise of riches or evasion, but the very act of choosing a direction with purpose beyond mere survival? They looked again at the road, its possibilities unfurling like sails, eager for the breath of fate. With a deep breath, the air thick with scents of earth coming alive in the day's retreat, the thief felt a tentative flame of resolve flicker to life. To weigh the risks of plunging into shadows, yet untravelled against the security and predictability, was to lay bare the soul of a conflict, as ancient as the stars. And yet, this notion of embracing the unknown tingled with the thrill of something akin to freedom. The stranger watched, offering only silence now a space that respected the sanctity of such decisions. The thief stood poised, the cusp of change both their anchor and their sails, in a moment made eternal by its significance. And then, like a tendril of smoke unravelling towards the sky's depths, the thief took a step forward, stepping away from shadowed confines and towards a horizon unread and untouched. What awaited them, their redemption, ruin, or revelation remained shrouded. But the first step had been taken. Under the soft gaze of twilight, the thief's footsteps became a symphony that only they could hear, a cadence of courage, inspired by the weight of newly ignited hope. Each measure of ground covered seemed to shed unseen chains, a liberation that spoke not through words but through the gentle rhythm of moving forward. The thief's journey, like a melody resolved from discord into harmony, was just beginning to find its true key. Yet, as the landscape stretched out before them, unknowns opened like the petals of the moonlit flowers lining the path. Every shadow seemed to whisper secrets, every rustle of leaves a quiet testament to the mysteries beyond. And amid this atmosphere of expectancy, the thief was keenly aware of the legacy they carried of choices made in dark corners and alleyways where their back was against the wall. Memories of encounters fraught with fear and desperation interspersed. Their thought show often had their hands shaken when confronted by encroaching boots of authority or the steely gaze of a judge. The semi-permanent markings of past captures still tinged their skin, shadows etched upon their spirit rather than any visible form of branding. It was a past that could neither be erased nor fully embraced, lingering as an ever-present muse to their efforts at redefinition. But now, in this space between where they had been and where they might go, the thief felt the faint glow of something rare and cherished possibility. It shimmered around them like motes caught in a sunbeam, intangible yet undeniably there, urging them to engage with it, to sculpt their future from its formless essence. As they walked, it seemed as if the very stars aligned above, silent witnesses to this transformation. Their light, a gentle reminder of constancy amidst upheaval. Inspired by the stranger's words, the thief began to consider what it might mean to hold on to lessons learned not through fear, but through curiosity. The world, they realized, was an endless expanse of stories, yet untold a narrative, teeming with opportunities for redemption not yet explored by their weary soul. Then came a sound, a low murmur drifting through the night air, something caught between a breeze's whisper and the first notes of dawn's chorus. It was a village, perhaps, nestled just beyond the next rise. Its presence was scarcely more than a suggestion, and yet it sang through the thief's senses with a siren call of undiscovered potential. Would this new community offer a chance to redefine their purpose? The thief paused at the crest of the hill, surveying the landscape below with a mix of apprehension and anticipation. This village, veiled in soft moonlight, exuded a serene beauty that contrasted starkly with the countless places they had slipped in and out of to survive. The glow of hearth fires twinkled through the windows, painting stories of warmth and familial bonds, striking a chord of yearning within the thief's chest. With each step descending toward the village, the soft crunch of soil beneath their feet seemed to echo the notion of new beginnings. Each grain displaced a testament to forward movement. The thief tucked away the worn cloak that had been both shield and identity in their past life, opting instead to face this potential future with openness, vulnerability etched into their determination. Memories of the fraught life of theft lingered at the edges of their consciousness. The quick judgment of distrustful eyes and the peril inherent in deceit. had worn grooves in their soul, shaping a narrative of survival against the unyielding forces of medieval hardship. Yet now, a shimmer of hope peeked through the well-worn fabric of their existence, whispering promises of redemption if not in the eyes of others, then perhaps within themselves. As they neared the outskirts, the thief noted the unmistakable rhythm of a community settling into evening solitude, hushed conversations, and shared laughter. This village, with its clusters of homes and winding alleyways, pulsed with life and potential. They were drawn to an inviting glow emanating from a central square, where the silhouette of a communal meeting placia tavern maybe stood as a beacon of welcome. Here, amidst the familiar elements of firelight and camaraderie, the thief longed to find not just a place to rest, but a space to belong. Was it possible to step out from the shadows and walk among them as an equal, a contributor rather than a predator? Could the narrative of their life be rewritten, not with themes of scarcity and loss, but of growth and renewal? As these questions twined through their thoughts, the thief paused, drawn toward the inviting light. A melody drifted from the square, crafted by a fiddler whose joyous tune danced on the night air. It was music that beckoned the spirit to rise, to join in celebration. The thief hesitated at the edge of entering this world, caught between the courage to step into the unknown and the tempting, comforting call of what was familiar. In the gentle embrace of the village's night, the thief stood on the precipice of choice, where past and future intertwined like the fragrant tendrils of smoke curling from the chimneys. Each note from the fiddler carried tales of places where the thief had never been but suddenly yearned to explore. This melody, stitching together the fabric of the evening, wove its spell upon the gathered community and tugged at something deep within the thief's spirit. The tavern, with its inviting glow, was more than a building. It was a promise. It held the essence of camaraderie that the thief had once viewed from the outside, peering through muddied panes of glass, yet never daring to enter. Now, its doors stretched wide to those who sought warmth and fellowship, offering respite from the chilling solitude of the wandering life. As villagers exchanged pleasantries, the thief noticed an elderly man with laughter lines creasing his face, a mother with a child in tow bundled against the evening chill, a group of young men engaged in boisterous discourse. Each was enveloped in the shared solace of belonging, of being part of something larger than themselves. This sense of connection was foreign, yet it ignited a flicker of hope within the thief's heart, like a lamp kindled against the long shadows of history. Steeling themselves with newfound resolve, the thief adjusted their cloak, a symbol of their former life, and took a tentative step toward the illuminated square. There was an urge, both primal and profound, to plant roots here, in soil that might prove fertile for the seeds of redemption and renewal. The trepidation of unveiling their true character to these strangers was laced with a hunger for acceptance. The thief understood that trust was not an offering freely given, but earned through gestures and time. Yet beneath this practical reasoning lay a dream, the dream of reclaiming a name, of shedding labels given in desperation and emerging as something untarnished and new. Just as this realization settled within, there was a rustling at the edge of the square. A figure slipped from the shadows opposite where the thief stood. Unnoticed by most, except the thief, who recognized a kindred spirit in their movements, a swift whisper of past deeds yet to be revealed. Could this be another traveler hoping to rewrite their fate? And if so, what tales might they share under the cover of night? The thief hesitated, heart caught between intrigue and caution as the figure emerged from the shadows, a silhouette against the flickering glow of the tavern's warmth. The movement was fluid, calculated, a dance learned from years spent gliding unseen through the narrow lanes of night. It was the gait of someone intimately familiar with the layers of dusk that cloaked intent and shrouded vulnerability. Eyes trained on the stranger, the thief's curiosity overpowered wariness. This individual, comely as the twilight itself, seemed to share an unspoken understanding, a silent camaraderie formed in the crucible of necessity. As if sensing the thief's gaze, the figure paused, a momentary lapse, revealing a glint of recognition in their icy mirror, reflecting shared paths, untold tales, and the whisper of secrets, protected by the night. With measured steps, the stranger moved toward the communal square, and the thief found their own limbs, acting of their own accord, compelled by a mutual pull. In a setting marked by camaraderie and warmth, the world seemed to constrict around these two souls, alone, yet entwined by the strings of fate and isolation. A soft breeze swept through the village, carrying with it the aroma of wood smoke and the vibrancy of merriment. It danced through scattered leaves, tracing its fingers along the edges of the thief's worn cloak, which swirled around their feet like spectral wraiths. The stranger drew nearer, their features slowly revealed by the ambient light spilling from the tavern's inviting doors. Then, as abruptly as their course had begun, the figure stopped, eyes meeting the thief's from across the narrow stretch of cobblestone, a silent conversation spoken in the language of those who wander. In that gaze, the thief saw echoes of their own past, a life speckled with moments of stolen joy and persistent shadows. With an unexpected gestureer slight nod, an unspoken invitation, the stranger pivoted and moved toward the tavern, merging with the jovial assembly gathered near the entrance. The thief lingered, suspended in an undecided moment between joining the stranger's pursuit of the light or retreating to the anonymity of shadowed lanes. Within the unfolding narrative of this night lay the potential for change, for shared stories and renewed hope. The thief sensed an opportunity, one tempered with the risk of exposure yet ripe with the promise of understanding, perhaps only the stranger could offer.